and welcome back. As I mentioned in our last lesson, I was going to be joined by Mark and Philomena from the OVEE community, a community that I have great admiration for. I've watched this community grow from around the start of this year, and I've been quite involved in the community from a learning aspect. I learn so much from what other people are posting, and I also like to contribute quite a lot. So, being quite excited, I'm going to move straight over to Philomena and Mark, and I'm going to start with Mark, and I'm going to ask him to give us a bit of a background and an introduction.
Hi, Paula. I'm Mark Timberlake. I run a online marketing and videography company called SME Heroes. And obviously our background with the OVEE community is we create a lot of online training. And Udemy is a very popular new platform that everyone's using. And we decided that we would create a community in, I think it was Christmas Eve 2014.
Okay, and Philomena, the same question then to you.
Okay.
A little bit of background.
Thank you for having us on, Paula.
No problem.
Very similar to Mark, actually. We run SME Heroes together. We run with 2 other people as well, so a small company. To help people with their have an online presence. I particularly help look after the video production side of things. So Mark sort of is the face of all the Udemy courses, and I sort of do a lot of the editing and the back end of things. So we sort of make a team that way. As Mark said, obviously OVEE started a little while ago, and I know you'll be asking lots of questions about that, which I look forward to chatting about.
Great, great. Well, one of my first questions is, and Mark, you've already touched on this, is when did OVEE start, and with how many members did it start with?
We started with 0 members. We started, like I said, December. What it was, I couldn't believe it. I got into Udemy. I had a Udemy course out there. I went on Google Plus as a top tip for your viewers here. I went on to Google Plus, and there just was not there wasn't really a Udemy community on Google Plus, and I just couldn't believe it. It was like, wow, how could there not be a Udemy community on Google Plus? And we may have felt a little pinched each other because we didn't have to compete. We could become we launched Udemy on Google Plus in all sort of reality when it came to actual instructors, and we had the opportunity. So we launched the OVEE, knowing there was no one doing that. There was a couple of groups out there. Like there was a coupon sharing group on Udemy, and there was a couple of groups that people had started and not done anything with, but nobody was talking. So I did some research. I searched for Udemy on Google Plus, and remembering with Google Plus communities, they're indexed in search. So the Google Plus, that OVEE community now, a lot of the content generated there obviously helps me in terms of SEO in regards to having expertise on the Udemy platform. And a lot of people start Facebook groups, but the advantage of a Google Plus group is that SEO, is that people are going to, when they start searching, Udemy grows, that community is going to give me and the members that are in the community a lot of benefit in search.
Okay, Philomena, would you agree or disagree with what Mark has said? And do you think that your reasons for originally setting up OVEE are still the same reasons for you to continue running it now?
Well, I would agree with what Mark has said. Obviously, we were absolutely delighted when we found that there was an opportunity to do a community. And at the time, it was actually Christmas Eve, and there was like, well, let's start it. And you'd think Christmas Eve, nobody's going to sort of, join, sure, But they did. People started, requesting to join, and we just, then we started engaging with them, welcome to the group, and I was really surprised just how, Christmas Eve that we're starting to get so many people interested. You think people would be out doing Christmas shopping at the last sort of minute. I think the reasons why we did it, we wanted to have a sort of a collaborative base. We ourselves were very interested in Udemy and the Udemy bug, if you like, and we just knew other people would want to, would have the same enthusiasm, and they'd want to learn and share as well as us, and it just seemed like a good idea. If anything, the reason has probably even become stronger as time has gone by, because Udemy is actually increasing in size, increasing market share, and online learning is getting stronger and stronger. So I think the reasons for it is even growing more and more, and more collaboratively working together is becoming more obvious.
Are you surprised with the growth?
I mean, it's not the growth so much, it's the engagement. I think we get good engagement in the group. Because we come from a social media marketing background, we know the principles of creating a community. We know how to get people on board, how to invite them, and how to get them. So I don't think it's I think the success of the group has surprised me a little bit, but we're really pleased that the community is actually growing, and how people are using it, and people like yourself, Paula, really contributing so positively, and and as well getting benefit, because there's a captive audience for your stuff there as well, and it's I think it's a great place to sort of be, and for people to come to outside of Udemy, because what you've got at the moment with the main groups in Udemy, they're controlled by Udemy.
Yeah,
there's some things you can't talk about. One of the major benefits of OVEE is you can say, I don't like this about Udemy, or how does Udemy compare to Fedora, or how do I, I want to take my courses off, and things like that. So there is a big advantage for people having a group to one side that people can access.
And I think as well, to add to that, with Google Plus, the way you set the communities up is you can have various categories. And I think we like that idea as well, because on Facebook, everything just there's one stream, and it just gets lost. Whereas the Google Plus, you can set up categories, as many as you want. I don't know if there's a limit on them, but you can just order things in a logical, orderly fashion, and data is retrievable. Discussions can be found again if they've been put in the right category, and it just is a lot more easier to sort of retrieve information.
Yeah, it's a much better resource for users than a Facebook group, for instance. A, because of that functionality, and B, because of the indexability in search.
How many members are on OVEE now?
We're over 900. I think we're about 907.
Over 900. And why do you think people actually join?
I think the main reason they join is because they want to learn about Udemy, and the real power in this community is the Hangouts. And that's what people got to understand with Google Plus communities. If you want to create a good Google Plus community, a Hangout will drive that community. So because we have topical Hangouts, because we're really talking about stuff that people want to know, it's useful, it's relevant, they're going to come there to get that information and to get involved and to interact with like-minded people. When you create an online course, that's quite an intense experience if you haven't done online courses before, if you haven't done video production, or if you haven't done much teaching. And if you can find a place where people are coming together and discussing that, and then you've got such a visual thing like the Hangouts, it can become really powerful. And I think that's one of the main things, because there's a lot of people out there with Google Plus communities, and they don't have the success we do in terms of engagement. Like we was just in a Hangout tonight with yourself, Paula, and you saw how many comments were coming in the stream, how many people were talking to. It's alive, it's vibrant, it's a community. People want to get involved in the discussions. And the heart of a powerful community is that discussion, and Google Plus gives us that.
You touched on something quite important there, and that's the learning element. As moderators and leaders of this community, you would be kind of classed as leaders in learning. But is there anything that you've actually learned from the members of the community instead of stuff that you've taught to the members?
Oh, yes. It's been wonderful. The amount of the wealth of information that people share, whether it be from checking out tools to use, checking out different platforms, checking out different resources, better ways of doing things. There's been so much that we've learned, and it's been really inspiring as well. I felt so inspired by all the different members and what they bring and their experiences and the encouragement. So yes, I personally have learned so much from other members.
Absolutely, and one of the things where I learn a lot of stuff is the Hangouts. In the Hangouts, when you're talking with people and you're bouncing ideas and stuff, the amount of little tips and things, there's changes I've made to the way I market my Udemy course based on the Hangouts I'm actually involved in. So it's a very collaborative experience, because you're a lot of the time you're communicating with other instructors that are also learning and trying different things. And see, if you're in isolation, you can't. It's very difficult in isolation to learn everything. But other people try completely different marketing techniques to yours, or completely different styles and ways they teach and the ways they present. And so you can gain so much more experience by engaging with other people. I think that's really, really valuable.
And I think to sort of illustrate that, one of the members, Scott Scrowcroft, he has a passion for repurposing content, and he calls it the Scott treatment, golden nuggets. And basically, he takes a piece of content, maybe a Hangout, and then he'll boil it down to sort of like a few minutes, and then puts it out as a short piece of content, a golden nugget for people to consume. And I was so impressed with that it inspired us to create pieces of small content from the Hangouts, and we call them snippets. But that was a great example. We were inspired by somebody else in the community. We could see we liked what they did. It was like, wow, we want to put this into practice. And now we create snippets. We take an hour-long Hangout, and we'll create maybe 3-4 minute little segments, a few of those, and it just helps complement the Hangout. So that's an illustration.
Yeah, so those little sound bites then, what Philomena will do, she'll share them in YouTube, and where people won't necessarily or might not initially, see a 1 hour long Hangout, and that's too much of a commitment. They'll watch a 4 or 5 minute Hangout, which we'll share out into our social profiles and into the community. People watch 4 or 5 minutes of that, and then they'll be like, I want to hear the rest of this interview because that's so good. So that was a very good example of something that came out of the community.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of collaborative learning, and collaborative learning is a situation where 2 or more people learn or attempt to learn something together. Sometimes it can be a sink or swim situation. Somebody will say, look, I'm going to try this, will you try this with me? But if it fails for both parties. If somebody's experimenting something online and they're documenting it, and you go along and they haven't finished their experiment, you're going to fail along with them. So I think that's a very good example of what you've given there, of the snippets, of the golden nuggets there as a collaborative learning. But there's also a social learning theory that says learning, it's not purely behavioral. It's a cognitive process that takes place in social context. And this theory was developed long before the internet, but it can be applied to social learning communities such as the OVEE community. And Mark, you touched on this, and Philomena, you also touched on this, the Google Plus Hangouts that you have every Sunday. Where do you get your topics from, and how do you select your panels?
Very interesting question. Topics. One of the things we teach in our courses, when people are trying to create interesting content, what you got to look for is what we call the stupid questions. And the stupid questions are the questions that new people to a subject will ask over and over and over again. So you'll see the same conversation come up over and over and over again. So, and we call them stupid questions, and it's just to help embed the idea in our mind, because it's stupid to us, but it's not stupid to them. Because we're experienced, we assume that that's something, we forget what we know, so we don't know what we know. So what happens is, when someone asks a question over and over and over again, do you know what they're telling you? They're telling you this is a core thing people want to learn. So a classic example tonight was, was in this Hangout with yourself, and, we've been talking about reviews. Now, they're quite simple, basic things we dealt with, but someone who's new to online digital products and online marketing don't understand the review system. So by creating that particular Hangout, what we've actually done is when someone now is looking for an answer on that subject, they can get that from the community-produced content. So we've answered that question for them. And that question now will sit in YouTube answered, and it will bring people back to the OVEE community, and back to the panelists who were there, who commented, and all the people involved. And that's one of the best ways of finding, topics.
I think in addition to that, we've also asked the community. So we've put posts up and said, what would you like discussed in a Hangout? And, you know, people have raised topics of concern, you know, of troublesome areas and stuff. So, you know, we've asked the question direct to members as well.
So you're communicating and you're building relationships and you can get responses that way.
Yes, yes, you know, and we get, you know, people have asked, oh, it'd be nice to have on this particular subject, you know, and, you know, and then we're able to put Hangouts together. So we're always on the lookout for hot topics. And
we've got a list. We've got a list
of
topics. So we've got a list on Drive. Whenever someone suggests a topic or I see something being asked a lot, either in the OVEE community or in maybe one of the other groups, if I see the same thing, I think this is a great discussion. People keep asking this question. And again, it comes back to that learning thing. I use exactly the same principle in my courses. I don't assume someone knows anything. So when I'm creating an educational course, it's very important that I deal with what I would consider, the term stupid questions, especially if it's a beginner course or it's an introductory course. If it's an advanced course and people know the terminology, I'm not going to cover those basics. But for most people, when they're learning, most people come into learning at the beginner level. So using the same principles. And you asked another question, Paul, is how we find people for the panel.
Yeah.
Well, what we do is we open it up to the community members. So community members can join the Udemy chat. We have two types of Hangout, really important to understand the difference. We have the Udemy chat, which is an open panel. Anyone who's a community member, we open up the invite, can come forward and join that panel. So that's for community members only. Have to be a member of the community. They come on, familiar with the community rules, so we keep it child-friendly, family-friendly. They come on and thinking, but sometimes if it's a particular subject, I will go and approach someone in the community and say, we're discussing this on the chat, would you like to be included? So I will occasionally go and ask people specifically because I know they've got expertise. And then we do the member spotlight sessions. And the member spotlight session is, that's where we want to give a community member a really sort of powerful spot where it's just them. And the difference between that is when you have a Udemy chat, which is a few people in the film strip, you get a lot more sort of general information. But when you do a spotlight, you can get much more succinct information from one person. So we run those two things. So the community member spotlight is a real benefit for the individual and for the community, whereas the chat is a very group-based, and we alternate them 1 week at a time.
Yeah. I mean, with the community chat, it's probably worth also mentioning that we, not just people that have got experience come on the panel, but people that haven't got any experience come on the panel, and we welcome that because they ask great questions. Because of, they're coming from a position of maybe not knowing too much about the topic, they'll ask some great questions actually in the panel, and it helps stimulate discussion. Plus, we want to encourage as many people as possible to experience being on a Udemy chat. So we welcome people on whether they've got experience or not in the topic.
Okay. Do you have any other examples of either social or collaborative learning that you've seen or you've experienced yourself within the OVEE community?
Yes. We've seen people go and pair off and like translation of courses, you'll have one instructor that maybe can speak a different language and they've paired up with another instructor to actually translate that course, and then they've gone into a collaborative working partnership. We too are actually going through the same process. We're having some of our courses translated by an OVEE member. So and it's a great. We wouldn't have known this or know that person if we hadn't sort of got to know them in the community. And it's a great example of how we're all working together.
Yeah, because for instance, we can't reach a Spanish audience. So Gisela, who's a very strong member in the community, she's got she as a part, one of her businesses is doing translation. So she's basically taken one of our courses and she's going to put Spanish subtitles. She's going to take all the copy, translate to Spanish, and we're going to list that in Udemy. In fact, she's working on three of our courses at the moment. Ooh. And then the whole revenue split then on that course is 50-50. So everything we earn from that course, 50% for us, 50% for her. So that's an example of a direct, collaborative, educational experience, but also a monetary one as well, which is interesting.
Okay, the community itself, if we just move back to the community and off learning a little bit, there's an awful lot of activity in this community. It's one of the reasons that I am so fond of the community. I am a member of communities on Facebook. I am a member of communities on LinkedIn. But I think this community is, I don't know, it just seems to have an awful lot more activity, positive activity, educational activity. How do you encourage this sort of activity, discussion and learning within the community?
Phil, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I can do. I mean, we encourage people, we'll ask questions. We encourage people to answer and get involved in discussions. We'll welcome people to introduce themselves, you know, because we're always keen. And that, you know, when someone introduces themselves with a little bit of information about themselves, you know, we can start, we've got something to work on. We've got a dialogue together. We'll pull people into conversations. So we'll ping somebody, you know, we'll plus them and ping them and draw them into the conversation so that, you know, it's getting more expertise. So there was a good instance, one of the members was asking about Kindle books. Now, we knew that Rob probably had several published. So we were able to say, oh, you know, Rob, can you jump into this conversation? What's your thoughts on this? And we did that with a few other members as well, didn't we, Mark? You know, pulled them into the conversation. And, you know, then it expands, you know, and people sort of get involved. So I think it's a variety of asking questions, encouraging people to introduce themselves, and then pulling people into conversations.
Yeah, and Rob was able to come in and give a lot more expertise on the subject, and we've never produced a Kindle book, and he was actually able then to say to people, it was really interesting because it's I think it was Sheila at the time was saying, you know, I'm going to produce this PDF, and he says, no, you don't want to produce a PDF. That's not the right way to do it. So, and then he could give a resource, he could give a link to another group where people were publishing, you know, so it was very collaborative and thingy. But I think one of the things Phil said is we're very keen on when people come in, we encourage them to introduce themselves. They start posting and they haven't introduced themselves. You will see me saying, hi, great to have you here. Can you just take time to introduce yourself? At the top of the community, there's a pinned video. And I'm going to, you know, when people come in the community, pinned post, they can watch the community. I'm going to encourage them, watch the video, sorry, and I'm going to encourage them to introduce themselves in the community. So you have to, at the beginning, this is what most people miss. When you start a community in the early days, me and Philomena had to stimulate nearly everything. And that's a real key thing when you're building a community. You have to stimulate. You get lots of people in there, but what you tend to have is you have a lot of lurkers, as they're lovingly known in, you know, online forums. So you get all these lurkers, and so the vast majority of people in a community just watch and read. They don't engage that much. So you have to draw the lurkers out, and the way to do that is to get them to introduce themselves, give them a reason for posting. So one of the things for us is we, you know, a lot of people, communities will say, oh, you can't post free coupons in here, you can't promote yourself. Well, we say promote yourself, put your blog post in here, put your community in here, give people an avenue for the social activity they're going to want to do in that community, and that's one of the key secrets to engagement. You know, you've got to give them the avenue. Let them share their course, let them share their special offers, let them share their blog posts, but make it conditional upon the fact that they've introduced themselves and taken the time to say hello to people, and then they can share and post. And once you get that going, then people will feel comfortable.
And because you've got the categories, then you're able to have a category for course offers, for instance. So then anyone that wants to post, you know, their course offers or coupon, you know, they can put it in there in the correct category, and then it doesn't sort of, you know, flood the general discussion area. You know, so there's a lot more, it's organized, and, you know, that really helps. And then you're able to, you know, offer that that avenue for people to express themselves because you've got the correct category to do it.
And that's the advantage we've got over like Udemy Studio. Obviously, Udemy Studio is going to have a lot more people, but it's very linear. You know, it's closed, it's linear. You're not allowed to talk about your courses. You're not allowed to promote. You're not really allowed to do anything in there because it's Udemy's property. So, you know, you can't really get really going with the engagement. It's very, very sort of difficult to do anything in there that's going to be collaborative or anything that's got a marketing feel, you know, especially lately. They've really cracked down on it lately. So when it comes to having this community, And this is what people don't understand about community. You've got to give people an outlet to the things they naturally want to do. If they can't do that in your community, they won't engage and they won't stay.
I have to agree with you there. And a lot of the things that you've said about this community, I think can actually be applied to the discussion board within the Udemy system. In the course that this is being presented in, you'll see the first activity of the course is to introduce yourself and to get to know your fellow student mates on the dashboard or within the discussion board of the actual Udemy system. The course hasn't gone live yet, so we've yet to see how successful that will be, but the whole course is about engagement, and it's about creating community and getting people talking and getting people working together through different learning styles and stuff like that. So I think an awful lot of what both of you are saying can actually be applied to the discussion board within Udemy. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things, the way you've got to treat a course is it's a mini social network within Udemy. That course can, if you can create a mini social network in your course around that subject in Udemy, and you can treat the course discussion area like that and the announcements like that, treat it as a mini social media group or community, start thinking like that, you'll realize you want engagement, you've got to create that in the course. And I know you're very strong on this, Paul, and you talk about this in your course. But if you think in terms like that, it begins to make sense. So if you take the skills of creating social engagement online in a community, apply them to a course, you will actually build community in that course. And the beauty of a Udemy course as well is you can add additional content as time goes on.
Yeah.
So you can keep stimulating that course and create community around that. So that's really, really important. And if you do that, you'll get engagement within the course.
You both have, well, together, you have quite a few online courses. Do you use the OVEE community as a base for the students to your course? And if so, do you think it's had an implication on the completion rates of your courses?
We have a free course on Udemy, a free Udemy course creation training course, and we invite people in that course to come back to the OVEE community. We also invite them in the main course to get familiar and come back and create that connection. So we see it as symbiotic. It comes back and they interact with each other. Does that make sense?
It does indeed, yes.
And then we get, we get a lot of people joining our community from the free course.
Okay.
So it's very, very important we bring them back into the free course. One of the things you've got to remember about Udemy as well is it's very hard to get people off there into your email list. You can't do it. It's prohibited. What you can do, however, is to send them to useful resource where you've got a community where you can create engagement and social depth with them. And then eventually, if you have a new course, you can announce that there in your community. It gives you another avenue of communication, and it allows you to establish your expertise outside of your Udemy course. So if I just relied on my Udemy course, I would have expertise within that course. But because I've got a community, my expertise on creating Udemy courses is available online, searchable, independent of Udemy. And it's another route back to me. So it's really important to create that, if that makes sense, to create that community where they can go and engage with you off that platform.
Okay. Okay. If someone was considering setting up a community like the OVEE community, what would be your advice to them?
Phil?
I think go for it. I would probably check out what other groups are existing, what engagement levels the other groups, so that you know who else is in the neighborhood, so to speak. But it's an excellent way to get collaborative working. It's an excellent way to make new friends, to establish authority. And I think there's so many positives to actually go ahead and do it. And I think we've sort of covered quite a few things in the discussion already. That have Hangouts. You've got to have a heart to the community. If not, it would be extremely difficult. Without the Hangouts, it would be very difficult to sort of keep stimulating discussions. Whereas the Hangout, it pulls people together, and then they're all commenting each week, and there's sometimes a little banter going on in the Q&A sometimes. And, you know, it's great to see. And the feedback that we get as well is people like, oh, that was really helpful. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next one. And it encourages you to sort of, you know, do the next one. And I think it's the Hangouts which is the heart of the community. And now that we do the snippets as well, people are like, oh, great. You know, I don't have time to watch the whole Hangout. You know, I really value just getting those, you know, snippets of information. So you've got to have a heart to the community, and you've got to be hot as well on the moderation, because if you're not careful, you know, a community will get overrun with spam if you're not careful. And you have to be very sort of strict on that. And you can't do everything by yourself. You've got to have help. And we've asked people to come in and be moderators because, you know, there's only two of us. We're in the UK time zone, so we can't, you know, halfway around the world. We're in different time zones around the world. So we welcomed people to help us, and they can, you know, when people are posting in different time zone and wanting to join, all the rest of it, and you know, you start to get aware of all the help. You do need help from other moderators, and you've got to be hot on who's coming in. You know, that the sole purpose isn't to spam, and you can tell pretty soonish when a community, if people are, that's their purpose to do that. So you've got to be hot on that.
Yeah, I would just say a couple of things. You know, bear in mind before you start a community, commit to it, because it takes a lot of work. You know, we produce probably 3 Hangouts every month, and that takes a lot of work in terms of the editing afterwards and the repurposing and putting that into YouTube. Be prepared to do the work. So when you start a community, don't start it on a whim. Start it because you've got a long-term objective for that community. You know why you're doing it. You know how it helps you create social proof around your expertise. The other thing is, don't start a Facebook group. Start a Google Plus group. Now, people really struggle with this because, you know, like, everyone's on Facebook, and it is harder to get people into a Google Plus group at the beginning, because people are not so familiar with Google Plus.
It is the least known of the social platforms.
Yeah, for those people outside of Google Plus. But the other thing about Google Plus that is really interesting is it's a lot more intellectual than the other groups. So Facebook tends to be very sort of there's a different type of person on Google Plus. Yes,
I've got that myself.
Yeah, and so with Google Plus, it's a little bit harder to build it up because you've got to bring people to somewhere they're unfamiliar. But if you link through YouTube videos and that, it's but the beauty of a Google Plus community is going to be indexed in Google search. So that means every bit of activity you do there is going to keep paying you back month after month, year after year. With a Facebook group, it's invisible. You can't see it in search. And that means, yeah, you might get loads of people in there. You might grow your numbers quicker. But the minute you stop producing any sort of content, you know, the engagement stops. People can't find it. Whereas with a Google Plus community, it's just structured so much better, and it's built into Google search. So they're the main sort of objectives. But be prepared to do the work. You know, that's the key thing, and get help early on, as Phil said.
Okay, Mark and Philomena, I think that's all the questions that I have for you this evening. I'd like to thank you both very much for taking part in this interview, and I hope all of the learners out there have taken on board what Mark and Philomena have said, and you can use your communities to help develop your course, give additional material for your courses, use it for social learning and use it for collaborative learning. And if any of you have any direct questions for Mark or Philomena, I'm going to be putting a link to the OVEE community in the additional resources, and you can check it out that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you for having us, Paula.
Bye now.